best PvP fruit in the whole game, and this is how you get 2+ hours of double XP for free. This is how you get to level 2,600 in 1 week. The biggest mistake that new players make is not knowing the difference between fruits that are meant for grinding and fruits that are meant for PvP. Let me give you guys 2 solid examples. First up, let's take a fruit like the shadow fruit. This fruit's actually a mythical fruit and it costs a total of 2.9 million belly. And that sounds crazy, doesn't it? Well, you're about to find out that it's not really that crazy of a fruit. And I'll show you why. Let me show you its abilities first. First, we got Somber Rebellion, where you literally just dash into an enemy combo, then you go up flying into the sky. This ability only does damage to 1 NPC, which means it isn't really that good for grinding. Moving on to the X ability, this one is called Shadow's Nest, where you just shoot a swarm of bats towards an NPC and the swarm will explode. And this ability actually does do a bit of area damage. Moving on to the C ability, this one is called Nightmare Leech, where you just dash your enemy and just start punching the crap out of them. Once again, this ability only damages 1 NPC. Moving on to the V ability, this one is called Corvus Torment, where you just basically deal damage to everything around you. And yes, this ability obviously does area damage. Then we got the F ability, which is just a pretty basic movement ability where you just fly around. And let's go back to the price of this fruit. It costs a total of 2.9 million belly. Just keep that amount in mind. Now let me show you guys a fruit called the Blizzard fruit. This is a legendary fruit, which means it obviously costs less. It only costs 2.4 million belly, which isn't a drastic difference, but once I show you the abilities of this fruit, you're gonna be really shocked. The very first ability of this fruit is called Snowflake Shuriken, where you can just basically shoot out a butt ton of shuriken towards multiple NPCs. Then we got the X ability, which is called Whiteout, where you just shoot out a tornado that deals damage to everything in its path. Then we got the C ability, which is called Howling Wind, where you just spawn in a super powerful tornado that deals damage to everything around it. Then we got the V ability, which is called Blizzard Domain, where you literally just spawn in a mega blizzard that deals damage to everything next to you. I mean, just look at this ability. It's super crazy. And moving on, we got the F ability, which is called Tornado Fly, which also deals damage to any NPC that's standing underneath you, which means that every single ability of the Blizzard fruit actually does area of damage. And yep, it might not do as much damage as the Shadow fruit, but at least it can do damage to multiple enemies at the same time. And if you add up the damage, this does way more. And that's the reason that you should always choose the Blizzard fruit over the Shadow fruit for grinding. And you might be thinking, I'm only in the first C, so how can I get the Blizzard fruit? Well, the Blizzard fruit is not the only fruit that's good for grinding in Blox fruits, and I can't really list all of them in this video because that would just be way too long. If you're struggling to get fruits and you don't know which ones are good for grinding, I definitely recommend getting the Smoke and Blade fruit. The Blade fruit only costs 30,000 belly, making it one of the cheapest fruits in the whole game. And the reason this fruit is really good for grinding at a low level is it actually has M1 attacks. Just look at this. You can just basically deal infinite damage without waiting for your abilities to cool down. Moving on to the X ability, this is called Razor Cycle, where you dash forward, dealing damage to an area in front of you. Then we got Blade Dance, which deals damage to everything around you. Then we got C ability, which is called Shark Terror, where you dash forward, and then F ability, which is called Turbine Flight. But none of the main abilities matter too much. The main reason you want to be getting this fruit is because of the M1 attacks, and also because of how cheap it is. Moving on to the Smoke fruit, this is also another fruit that's an alternative to the Blade fruit, but it does cost a bit more, which makes it a bit more difficult to get. It costs a total of 100,000 belly, and you can get it from the Blox fruit dealer. The first ability is called the Smoke Slam, where you just slam into whatever's in front of you, and nope, unlike the Blade fruit, this actually does not have M1, so I would consider the Blade fruit a better alternative. The X ability is called Smoke Blast, where you shoot out a smoke projectile. The C ability is called Smoke Liberation, where you deal damage to everything around you. And moving on to the most important ability of this fruit, Smoke Bomber. You basically just launch yourself up into the sky and just start dropping smoke bombs below you. The reason this ability is really good is basically just lets you do damage to NPCs below you without them being able to do any damage to you. And you also get this thing called Elemental Immunity, which you get from all elemental fruits, which means that if you're a higher level than someone, then they actually can't damage you unless they have Haki. And in the first year, a lot of NPCs don't have Haki, so this fruit comes in handy a butt ton. But anyways, moving on from the fruits, let me tell you guys about the fighting styles. In the first seed, there's a total of 3 fighting styles you can get: the Dark Step, the Electric fighting style, and Water Kung Fu. And Water Kung Fu is actually the hardest fighting style to get out of all of these fighting styles. And the reason for that is because it's the most expensive. It costs a total of 750,000 belly. And you can buy it right here from this NPC, located at Underwater City. And to get to Underwater City, you have to find this entrance, and then boom, you just have to head inside it, and then just follow this exact path. And then boom, you can buy this NPC. And keep in mind, you actually don't need to have unlocked the Underwater City to buy this fighting style. You just need to know where to find it. And you obviously need to have the money for it. And the reason Water Kung Fu is so good is because unlike other fighting styles in the game, which have a delay between their third M1 ability, the Water Kung Fu fighting style actually does not have them, which means you can just basically spam the crap out of it with no delay. And once you get into the second C, you can also upgrade this fighting style to something called Sharkman Karate, which is basically just the same fighting style, but it just does more damage. Anyways, moving on, let me tell you about the current best fruit for grinding in the whole game. It's the Magma fruit, and believe it or not, it's actually in a lower rarity than the Blizzard fruit. It's a rare fruit and only costs 960 million belly. And keep in mind, the best fruit in the game actually used to be the Buddha fruit, but they nerfed that pretty badly. Anyways, let me tell you about this Magma fruit. The reason it's a really good fruit is because most of its abilities actually do a lot of area damage. And the fruit also has an awakening. The unawakened version of the fruit looks like this. The abilities are pretty basic and nothing crazy, to be honest. But once you awaken the fruit, this is what the abilities turn into. The Z ability becomes Magma Shower, where you just shoot shoot out a butt ton of magma blobs. The X ability is called Volcanic Assault, where you just dash into one enemy and just pummel the crap out of it. Then we got the C ability, which is called Great Magma Hound, where you just shoot out one huge magma blob that deals a butt ton of damage. Then we got the V ability, which is called Volcanic Storm, where you shoot out one projectile that just creates a butt ton of magma blobs. And the F ability is called Beast Ride, which also does a bit of damage. It also helps you move from place to place, which is pretty convenient. And the reason the magma fruit is the best grinding fruit currently is because it's actually the fruit in the game that does the most damage. Because once you use an ability of the magma fruit, you're gonna realize that it leaves behind this huge blob. And if you get the NPCs to stand in that blob, then they actually continuously take damage. But if you're looking for any in-betweens from the smoke and blade fruit to the magma fruit, I definitely recommend the light or ice fruit. Because you get a passive sword ability with these fruits, which means you can deal damage even when your abilities are on cooldown, which comes in handy a lot. The next thing you need to know when it comes to leveling up is actually how to kill your enemies. Obviously, you want to be grouping them up, just deal as much damage to them as possible. If you group them up, then you can just hit them with one ability and it deals damage to all of them. And to group them up, I recommend buying a gun to gather them up. And once you do that, you can just pummel them with your abilities. And another thing you want to do is not always follow the compass. It does not know what's best for you, trust me. Let me give you a quick example on the first sea. So at the pirate village, you're going to notice the pirate NPCs right here are super close to each other and pretty easy to gather up. And once you finish this quest, the normal player might head to the brutes at the back. But once you get to the brutes, you're going to notice that they're spaced super far apart and they also have more HP and they're way harder to kill. So in this situation, I just recommend doing the Pirates quest, and the reason for that is because even though they give you overall less XP, you can just grind out the quest a lot faster, and at the end of the day, you're just gonna get more XP from doing the Pirates quest anyway, because it's way closer to the quest dealer and the enemies are just easier to group up. The next thing that you definitely want to be doing is getting your hands on Hockey. Hockey is an extremely useful ability, and it's literally an essential for people in this game. And the place you get is at the Snow Island from the ability teacher, and it costs a total of 25,000 belly. So as soon as you get your hands on 25,000 belly in this game, this is the first thing you should be buying. Not only does it increase your damage output, it also increases your defense, and it levels up over time, making you do more damage and making you more immune to abilities. Moving on, I'm going to be telling you about an extremely useful accessory in the game that's going to help your butt ton when it comes to grinding. This is the Ghoul Mask, and you get it from an NPC called El Perro on the Curse ship. This accessory gives you a 10% life leech on all your melee attacks. It also gives you plus 500 energy and it increases your movement speed by 35%. And the reason Life Leech is so good is that you can basically spam attacks on NPCs and you don't really need to worry too much about your health. But the Gold Mask isn't the only good accessory in the game. Every time you come across the accessory, I recommend getting it because you can't really go wrong with them. And make sure you also tune them to your build. So if you're a fruit main, don't be buying accessories that increase your sword damage. That just doesn't make any sense. Now I'm going to be telling you about 2 tricks that are just going to make your grinding life a lot easier and a lot more efficient. I'm going to be telling you how to server hop bosses. Normally once you get the boss quest in the game, you need to wait for the bosses to respawn after you kill them. But if you click the servers button right here and just hop into a new server, chances are that same boss is alive in the other server. Which means you can maximize your XP output, because the boss quests obviously give you more XP than the normal quest. The next thing I'm going to be telling you about is how to get a free private server, because if you're grinding in a public server, then you're just going to get bombarded with abilities from other players and you're probably not going to be able to grind in peace. And if someone's doing the same quest as you, it gets even worse. And the way you get a free private server is by heading into the servers tab and filtering it to ascending. Then you're going to see servers that only have like 1 or 2 players in them. And usually the players in those servers are AFK. So just join up the server and enjoy grinding your quests in peace. The next thing that's going to maximize your XP output is changing your race. There are obviously different races in Blox Fruits, and once you get into the second sea, you can get your hands on a race called the Ghoul race, which just helps a butt ton when it comes to grinding, because the abilities of this race are just tuned towards it. The first thing you have to do is get your hands on 100 ectoplasm, and you can get that by killing NPCs at the cursed ship. Once you do that, you have to get a Hellfire Torch, which can be dropped by the cursed captain. After you do all of this, you can talk to the experiment NPC who's found at the middle of the kitchen inside the cursed ship. Also make sure you get the V2 and V3 for the Ghoul race. It helps a butt ton. The next thing that you need to do is definitely use codes. Codes are literally an essential. They give you a butt ton of benefits. And all you have to do to find codes is literally just search up codes for Blox Fruit. There's at least 15 active codes currently in the game that give you double XP for 20 minutes. That's literally hours of double XP being wasted if you don't use the code. The next thing you definitely need to do is optimize your stats. And what I mean by that is that you need to choose something you're going to main. You have to choose a sword, a fruit, or your fighting style. If you're maining your fighting style, then you want to put a lot of stat points into your melee and a bit of your stat points into your defense. If you're maining a fruit, then you want to have a 3-way split between your fruit stat points, your melee stat points, and your defense stat points. And if you're maining a sword, you want to do the same thing, but instead of putting them on your fruit, you want to put them on your sword. And there isn't really any best split in the game. You kind of just have to choose your own playstyle. And the next thing that you should do if you can is buy the double money and double master game pass. It's going to help a butt ton. And that's pretty much it.